Hello, and welcome to the 2026-27 Alveary book videos for grades 4 to 6. I'm Carrie Forney, Executive Director of the Charlotte Mason Institute and a former homeschool mom of 5 adult children. If you're new here, we're so glad that you found us. I want to take just a few minutes to introduce you to the Alveary and the Charlotte Mason Institute, the nonprofit behind the Alveary Curriculum. The Charlotte Mason Institute, or CMI, began over 20 years ago as a gathering of educators passionate about Charlotte Mason's philosophy and practices. That annual conference is still a highlight of our year, and we'd love to have you join us. From those early conversations, the Alveary Curriculum was born over a decade ago. We saw the need, educators like you, needing a helping hand in implementing a Charlotte Mason education through lesson plans that support you when you're pulled in many directions and help you implement Mason's methods as you teach your students. We've grown significantly since those early years. CMI now offers various publications, training courses, certificate and graduate level for home and classroom educators, as well as school leaders, and support for co-ops and accreditation for Charlotte Mason schools of all sizes. Our Alveary curriculum is designed for and widely used in both homeschools and classroom settings, whether that classroom is your local Charlotte Mason co-op or one of the growing number of Charlotte Mason schools across the country. The curriculum and resources are written by a collaborative team that ensures quality and cohesiveness across subjects and grades. You'll meet a few of those team members in this video, but you can see our whole team on CMI's website. Now, let me show you one of the things that makes Alveary unique, our lesson plans. These lesson plans work alongside the books you're reading with your students. They're not just a list of assignments. They guide you through Charlotte Mason's methods with clear, practical steps for each lesson. Alveary Plus members also enjoy even easier planning with Syllabird, an online planner which has all your lessons loaded and ready to customize. This is what sets us apart: rich, living books combined with thoughtful lesson plans that do the heavy lifting for you. As a member, you'll also enjoy a private online community of fellow Alveary members where you can ask questions and gather inspiration. While we do offer most of our subjects individually in our store, membership is our best value. For $2.99, a family membership gives you access to every lesson plan for every grade, all subjects, 1st through 12th grade. This is especially helpful if you want to move a child up or down a grade in different subjects, or combine students across grades, or switch to a different grade's lesson plans if your child has already read a particular book. Everything is at your fingertips. Now to the books. We won't have time to cover every book and subject that's included in the Alveary this year. The video would be way too long. But we'll be highlighting several books that represent the depth and breadth of what we offer. And you'll see images of most on the screen. Keep in mind that our full course lists and book lists give detailed descriptions of each course and how each book fits into the curriculum. Beyond books, Alveary brings in website links, PDFs, our own exclusive member resources, and much more to create a complete learning experience. For a full list of subjects and resources, visit Alveary's sample page on our website. So how do we go about choosing the books? We don't always go for the most challenging language or highest Lexile level. Instead, we ask, what makes this the best book for this subject and these students? We consider different genres, diverse perspectives, and books that will truly engage young minds and hearts. Our goal is a relational education, one that fosters students' relationship with God, humanity, and the universe through books, art, music, nature, and so much more. If you're curious about Alveary, we invite you to explore before you commit. On our website at alveary.org, you'll find free samples of our lesson plans and a free term of lessons to try. We want you to experience Alveary firsthand and see if it's the right fit for your family or classroom. For a more personal opportunity, we'd love to invite you to one of our open houses. It's a wonderful time to ask questions, meet other educators, and learn more about how Alveary can support your teaching journey. You can sign up for an open house through the link on our website. We look forward to meeting you soon at an open house, one of our member Zoom calls, or on our private social media platform. We're here to support you every step of the way. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, I'm Shannon Whiteside, Alveary Program Director, and I'm here with some of our collaborative team members, Meredith Donaldson-Clark, Danielle Merritt-Sinceri, and Catherine Avery. We will be talking about grades 4 through 6 in this video. In these grades, students are growing in their ability to orally narrate and begin to do written narrations as well. Formal grammar begins in 4th grade, as well as regular dictation and copywork lessons. As they are able, students should read many of their books themselves. During these years, students are introduced to a couple of Mason's favorite subjects, Shakespeare and Plutarch. In 4th grade, world history is added, and then ancient history in 5th grade. As students become more independent, our lesson plans help you navigate their changing needs. A Charlotte Mason education falls into 3 domains of knowledge: knowledge of God, knowledge of humanity, and knowledge of the universe. The goal is to not accumulate knowledge, but to build relationships with all these areas of learning. As educators, we can't force a relationship, but we can help to cultivate these relationships as we introduce students to these areas and allow them to do the work of processing what they are reading through narration. As we choose books and create lesson plans, we are keeping this idea of relationship in mind. Let's begin with the knowledge of God. Charlotte Mason said, of the 3 sorts of knowledge proper to a child, the knowledge of God, of man, and the universe, the knowledge of God ranks first in importance, is indispensable, and most happy-making. She didn't want Bible lessons to be moralistic and children to feel like the Bible is a list of do's and don'ts. But she wanted each Bible lesson to give new thoughts of God, new hopes of heaven. When students are young, we want them to come to know God through His stories. Therefore, grades 1 through 6 read through selections of the Old Testament narratives and the Gospels. 3rd through 6th grade share the same Bible lessons. They will read through selections from the books of Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel. For New Testament, they are studying the book of John, a helpful book used in both the Old Testament and New Testament lessons is titled The New Manners and Customs of Bible Time. Through illustrations, photos, and clear explanations, the author shows us what life was like in Bible times, so Scripture can come more alive as students imagine living in that time and place. We will assign certain sections before or after Bible readings that will help students understand the context of the passage and get more insight into the culture and geography of Israel. Our Bible lessons also include readings about men and women from church history from the historical time period we are studying. For 2026 and 27, we are studying the time period of 1800 to 1900. 4th through 6th graders will be reading 2 different missionary biographies. One of these biographies is Hudson Taylor, Deep in the Heart of China. He is the founder of the China Inland Mission. His love for the people of China and his trust in the Lord to provide financially for his ministry continues to be an inspiration to Christians.
So let's start talking about history now. So you've already introduced the idea of our history rotation, Shannon, and that we'll be studying the 1800s this year for our modern time period, and then adding world history in for grade 4, and then students in 5 grade 5 and up study ancient history as well, and that period will be 100 BC to 350 AD. And as you were just mentioning about church history, even though church history is under Bible, that knowledge of God, when you look at it in the curriculum, it's going right along with this larger historical time period as well. So as Charlotte Mason says, the goal for history is not to fill students up with information and sort of give them everything that they might, all the facts they might need, but to allow them to, and this is a quote, possess a pageant of history in the background of one's thoughts. We may not be able to recall this or that circumstance, but the imagination is warmed. And that's from Philosophy of Education. So since history is the pivot of our curriculum, like Charlotte Mason created and recommended, students are learning about the time periods in the artist study and composer study and geography, like church history, like we mentioned, literature, handicrafts, so across multiple subjects. And one of the most important historical insights for students to embrace as they continue to grow older is the idea that the way things are now are not the way that they have always been, and that the past was different from our experiences today. But at the same time, that there are still things that we can learn from it. And we keep these ideas in mind when we're choosing books and thinking about the various primary sources and artifacts that we have in the lesson plans, so that kids are encouraged toward this kind of historical thinking. So we pick a variety of genres and autobiographies, historical fiction, nonfiction, and just keeping that big idea in mind.
Let's talk about U.S. history. One of the books we'll read this year is Lincoln, a Photobiography by Russell Friedman. And in this book, students will come to know Abraham Lincoln through the use of authentic photographs and narratives. And as students read about Lincoln's personal and public struggles, they will learn about the character and leadership of this man during one of the most tumultuous times of our nation's history. We will also be learning about the exciting adventures of Lewis and Clark and the engaging narrative of Seaman, the dog who explored the West with Lewis and Clark. This fictional account is full of accurate details drawn from Lewis's own diary entries. This book provides students an interesting and accessible way to understand the challenges, dangers, and daily life of the Lewis and Clark expedition. The westward expansion is a major part of the 19th century. Children of the Wild West by Russell Friedman does an excellent job of showing what it was like for children to experience that period of history. Many fascinating photographs are included in this book that helps students see how different life was back then. He also tells about what life was like for some Native American children who had to navigate boarding schools and give up their traditional ways. Students will also be reading chapters of the book Heart and Soul by Kadir Nelson throughout the year to capture the experience of what life was like for African Americans from the start of our country through Reconstruction.
There's also a separate stream of history for Canadian students. The Canadian students in grade 4 learn about 19th century Canadian history alongside grades 2 and 3 students. Some books they read include the Kids' Book of Canadian History, The Spirit of Canada, Laura Secord's Brave Walk, Born, A Foal, 5 Kittens, and Confederation, and I Am Not a Ghost. I encourage you to watch the grades 1 to 3 video for more information about these titles. In grades 5 and 6, Canadian students will learn about this period of Canadian history by continuing to read Janet Lunn and Christopher Moore's The Story of Canada. This engaging and thorough overview of Canada's past provides a detailed account of the major events of the period: the War of 1812, the rebellions in Upper and Lower Canada, Canada's role in the Underground Railroad, Confederation of 1867, the Northwest Rebellion, and the completion of the Canadian Pacific Railway. This book does a great job of providing an overview of the events with also detailed information about individuals and individual places, and it gives students a very clear sense that Canada of the 19th century was a very different place than the Canada that they are living in now. Students will deepen their knowledge and relate to historical figures and events by reading several biographical and historical fiction works. One of the biographies, a book called Tecumseh, presents the events of the War of 1812 from the perspective of Tecumseh, a Shawnee chief and close ally and friend of Isaac Brock, commanded the British troops in Upper Canada.
Next, we are going to talk about world history, but before we jump into the books, it's important to remember that students are learning about people from other countries and many of their other subjects: composer study, picture study, handicrafts. In world history, we want students to get a feel for what is happening in other places and immerse them and have them immersed in that time and place. We want each book to warm their imagination and awaken their curiosity. So we have them read a variety of genres: nonfiction, biography, and historical fiction. And we also encourage them to start keeping a book of centuries. This can provide a kind of spine to see the connections between different events and people. Students learn about Ireland in the book Under the Hawthorn Tree by the Irish author Marita Conlon McKenna. It is a fictional account of a family during the 1840s when the country was devastated by the potato famine. Although it is a dark time in history, this story also shows the resilience of the three siblings who continue to care for one another despite hunger, fear, and constant uncertainty. This is an important event that helps students understand why so many Irish immigrants came to the U.S. during this time period. Students will learn about Japan in the wonderful book Commodore Perry in the Land of the Shogun. During this period in history, Japan had been isolated from the outside world for centuries. But when American Commodore Perry and his troops sailed to Japan with a letter from the president, everything began to change. In ancient history, we will cover the time period 100 BC to 350 AD. With the book Bronze Bow by Elizabeth George Spear, students will be immersed in the world of first century Judea. In this book, students will come to understand the historical realities of Roman occupation and Jewish resistance. It tells the story of an 18-year-old Daniel Bar Jamin who seeks to avenge his father's death and is filled with hatred toward the Romans who are beginning to invade his country of Israel. But through the friendships he makes and the words he hears spoken by Jesus of Nazareth, Daniel learns that hatred is not the answer. In the book Redemption, The Church in Ancient Times by Luke Davis, students will learn about Christians from this time period, whose faith led many of them to martyrdom. Beginning with Peter at Pentecost, the author tells about saints such as Ignatius, Cyprian, and Athanasius, who defended the truths of Christianity against heresy. Instead of just giving us facts about the different people, the author tells a story about a time in their life that helps the reader understand who they are and why their story is recorded in history. This series is also used in the 7th and 8th grade church history course. However, we think this volume is a great way for 5th to 6th grade students to be able to see how these important church fathers fit into the stream of history. These were the life and times they were living when the persecution from the Roman Empire was prevalent.
In geography, our curriculum covers various strands of geography over the years. We want students to learn about physical geography, historical geography, regional geography, and cartography, or the study of maps. 4th through 6th grade geography is also tied to the historical time period we're studying. Since we're studying the 19th century, we thought it would be a great time to read the book David Livingstone, African Explorer. It begins with David in his home country of Scotland and tells how he made his way to Africa. Students will be intrigued by his adventurous spirit, his near-death experiences, as well as the flora and fauna of Africa. Our lesson plans provide map drills and mapping activities not only about Africa, but how to create other kinds of maps based on one's room or neighborhood. They'll also use the book Africa is Not a Country, which briefly explains some interesting things about each country so students get a feel for what it's like in the 21st century.
Let's now turn to talk about English. Grade 4 starts with a very gentle study of grammar, and we use Michael Clay Thompson's grammar and writing books as the backbone of our grammar and writing program from 4th to 9th grades. He talks about the ideas of language and the importance of knowing the parts of a sentence, not just to know them or memorize a list of rules, but because it allows us to communicate well. He does a good job of tying it all together, and each book contains a review and deepens concepts from the ones before. The subject should be done together with your students so you can discuss the ideas and have them articulate what the author is saying. 4th grade begins with the books Grammar Island and Practice Island. 5th grade works on composition as well with the book Sentence Island while still finishing up Practice Island. And 6th grade uses Grammar Town and Practice Town. The lesson plans will guide you through these books and which exercises to focus on. And as students become comfortable with the mechanics of writing, they also will begin writing and eventually also typing their narrations, which provides essential foundations to more structured composition lessons in the older grades. We also provide copywork and dictation books with passages that come from this year's books.
Let's talk about literature next. So as we've mentioned, students are reading more of their books independently at this age. So we're looking for a variety of reading levels for them to enjoy that are both sort of challenging, but then also more accessible. But then obviously, no matter the rotation or the reading level, we are looking for well-written, nourishing stories for our literature selections. But starting in grade 4, Charlotte Mason's Form 2, Charlotte Mason connected the literature with the history. So starting in these grades, we're looking for not just the great stories, but also the great stories about the time period or written during the time period that we're studying. And one exciting thing about this year's rotation is that although we have to rely more heavily on historical fiction for the earlier rotations, once we get to the 19th century, there's a lot more people who are writing literature for children and poetry with sort of children in mind. And so we're able to focus a lot more on period literature. And so you'll find classics like Little Women and Hans Brinker that are in the book list. So kids are reading these great stories, but also getting a sense for the time period since they were actually written in our time period. And then we also have a mythology sort of stream going through these early grades. And so grade 4 reads Norse mythology with In the Days of Giants. And then grades 5 and 6 read from Thomas Bulfinch's Age of Fable. And then since collecting fairy tales was basically a pastime for people in the 19th century, it seems like we're also going to have a term of fairy tales from a variety of places, from Russian fairy tales to South American fairy tales as well. So for poetry, we are using a lovely anthology of 19th century children's poetry as the sort of backbone to expose children to lots of delightful poems. But then each term, we're also focusing on one poet as well. And this year, Rabindranath Tagore, sometimes called the Robert Louis Stevenson of India, and then Pauline Johnson and Paul Laurence Dunbar will be our new friends. And then starting in grade 4, students also start learning and reading Shakespeare. We have our beginning Shakespeare plans that always go through A Midsummer Night's Dream. So grade 4 students and anyone who's just new to Shakespeare starts there. And then starting with grade 5 and up, students go through a rotation, and this year they're reading the plays The Tempest, A Winter's Tale, and Henry IV, Part 2. And then, as always, our lesson plans for all subjects and literature include extra links, extra helpings, narration suggestions, discussion questions to help students just explore further and engage the ideas that they come across in these books.
Citizenship is an important subject in a Charlotte Mason education. Students in 4th grade read stories from the history of Rome that give them a foundation for Plutarch, which begins in 5th grade. They will be reading from the Plutarch Project from Anne White, and the lives they will be covering are Julius Caesar, Agis, and the Gracchi. We know Plutarch can seem overwhelming for some people, so we provide a beginner's track for Plutarch. These lesson plans cover 2 terms, reading the life of Publicola. There'll be more guidance, and the readings will be shorter for students new to this subject. We don't want you to miss the subject that Mason esteems so highly. She stated in her book, School Education, perhaps nothing outside of the Bible has the educational value of Plutarch's lives.
For handicrafts this year, we're focusing on beauty for beauty's sake. The industrialization that lasted through the early 1900s was a time of mass producing and standardizing goods, and originality took a back seat. This gave birth to the arts and crafts movement in the late 1800s. People began focusing on beauty for the sake of beauty and making everyday objects beautiful once again. Our handicrafts will reflect this shift in history. We will learn how to do sashiko work as they did in Japan and red work as it was done in the United States and Europe. These are hand stitching techniques that incorporate different stitches to create beautiful patterns. Sashiko traditionally features white cotton thread on indigo dyed fabric, and red work uses red thread on white or light colored fabric. Students will also learn the art of cloisonne that regained popularity in the West during that time. Cloisonne is an enameling technique that uses metal strips to create delicate designs. We think our students will have a fun time bending their wire pieces into a pattern or picture and then filling that design with the colored sand mixture. We follow Mason's model and do clay modeling every year for one term. We're revamping our clay modeling program. You'll see a shift towards focusing on one hand building technique per year for younger and inexperienced students, and more connections across the curriculum in observation and narration assignments. Students will be encouraged to apply their skills in other subjects to boost learning and understanding. For example, creating architectural replicas in architecture, or creating characters in literature, or 3D models for nature study. Our lesson plans provide the training videos that you need for this.
Music and picture study are another way for students to really experience the time period. So we're studying the art of Vincent van Gogh, a Dutch post-impressionist painter who painted anything and everything he saw at a fever pitch. We think, as far as we know, we've already have over 850 paintings and 1,300 works on paper from him. And then we're also focusing on Edward Mitchell Bannister, who is a Canadian-American oil painter of the American Barbizon School. And he painted simple landscapes directly from observation. And then finally, Lilias Trotter, who is really hard to classify into a particular style, but tended to render watercolor and sketching in a realist way that accurately reflected what she saw around her as a missionary in North Africa. And then students are studying the music of Gilbert and Sullivan, and even we try to coordinate our classic hymn choices. So Angels We Have Heard and High, that famous Christmas carol, was composed or primarily published sort of the mid-19th century. So we're including that this year. And all these things just become a way to connect with the people from the past and experience all these different subjects in a hands-on and acoustic and visual way altogether.
In science for grades 4 through 6, students begin to notice that science is an active part of their world, and they begin to look for their own special interests too. Students also begin to get their feet wet in the laboratory sciences at this point. So there's a lot going on developmentally for this age group, and the books and lessons are here to support you through that development. Students dig into the idea of ecosystem and stewardship as they encounter new creatures in books like Octopus Scientist and Beetlebusters. They discover things too small to see in books like The Universe in You and The Forest in the Tree. And they grapple with a world that's bigger than they can imagine in books like Mission to Pluto and Plate Tectonics. At the same time, their lesson plans support their engagement with both the ideas and the things, sometimes with activities, sometimes with supplemental videos, sometimes through discussion prompts. And you are supported with tips, reminders, and links to helpful resources. Like our outdoor work resource, which provides inspiration on the go, and nature journal prompts that can be coordinated with their lessons or shared across grades. Also vital to Alveary Science is our series of custom lab manuals. These books provide your supply lists broken down by lab, a scope and sequence to build the foundational skills and habits needed for continued growth, and teaching tips to help you adjust to your students' needs.
As we said at the beginning of the video, if you have questions or just want to connect, feel free to DM us on social media or send us an email. We're here to support you every step of the way. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Alveary. We're excited about the year ahead and hope you'll join us in this journey towards delightful living.